Thank you guys. I'm really excited to be here and speak with all of you about hopefully a fun topic. We're going to be talking about photography, something that brain science has shown makes us happy as humans. The way we store happy memories is predominantly in images, and I think the popularity of photography very much speaks to that. And I want to walk you through in about 18 minutes or less kind of what has happened with consumer photography from its very beginnings to some of the really bleeding edge innovation that's happening with photography on the social web. And I brought a little mystery box with me that we'll open up in a second here and talk about that relates to some of my past experience. Just so you know the context, I was co-founder and CEO of an online photo service called Ophoto that was very early in taking consumer photography to the web. Many of you know Dave Geary at Endeavor, and Dave worked very closely with me for many years building Ophoto. And we sold that company to Kodak in 2001, and I stayed on and ran it as a wholly owned subsidiary of Kodak for another 3 years or so. More recently, I've been an investor and an advisor and a board member to a number of digital and social photography companies, and I'll show you a couple of those today. But starting out, when we think about consumer photography, I want to show you how we've gone from this notion of being able to take and capture pictures to being able to do that digitally. Many of you remember when digital cameras were pretty rare and pretty expensive. From there, we went to what I call mobile photography, which is your camera came free with your cell phone. And if I can ask for a show of hands, who in the audience has a camera on their cell phone today? Yeah, that was an easy question, right? And what's interesting is that we've now gone from mobile photography to social photography. And I'm going to talk about what that means and dive into a little bit as to how that happened. And it might help you understand how great social phenomena happen on the web, and it might inspire you in the products and services that you're building at your companies. So let's zoom out and go to the year 1900. This is roughly when consumer photography was invented. And I singled out the Brownie Camera. This was a product from the Eastman Kodak company that really made photography accessible to everyone. Before this, photography was a very, very difficult science with very arcane equipment. And if you look at some of the early advertising that Kodak did for this, it's surprisingly friendly and consumer-focused. This idea that for, I think it was for $1, you could buy the Brownie Camera, and they had a cute little mascot. Now, if we zoom out and we think about 100 years later, and we look to the late 90s, this is when we started Ophoto. Ophoto launched in December of 1999. It was around the time where Apple had shipped the first consumer digital camera, the QuickTake 100 that you see on that slide. My first digital camera, the Nikon Coolpix 950, is up top. That was a 2-megapixel camera. It was state-of-the-art at the time. And when we launched Ophoto, we basically had a vision that digital photography was going to change the way we took pictures, and it was going to create some new problems. How do you share those pictures when they're digital? And then how do you print them and turn them into Kodak prints? And so we had this crazy idea to build a service to do that. And when we first marketed that service, this was one of our early advertisements, we used the tagline, rediscover photography, because we found that it was a renaissance when suddenly your pictures were digital. You never ran out of film. You could take more pictures. You could manipulate them in a digital darkroom. You could share them on the internet. It really was a game-changing event for consumer photography. But there was a catch. When we were doing this in 1999, broadband was not very pervasive. At least not in the United States. Most people did not have a digital camera. Film cameras cost about $20, and digital cameras cost about $1,000. So it was a very, very risky idea in terms of when we did it. And I want to go to my mystery box and just quickly show you what this box is. This was the launch kit that we used to send to press when we launched Ophoto. So we actually made about 25 of these. We picked the 25 most important journalists that we wanted to write about our new service, and we sent them one of these. And inside the box was a set of instructions and a 2-megapixel digital camera and most importantly, a floppy disk adapter so that they could get the memory card from the camera to their computer to transfer these digital files. I mean, that's how hard it was not that long ago, right? We're talking, less than 15 years ago. This was really, really bleeding edge. So a lot happened, but it took 100 years for us to go, from the Brownie camera to digital photography and online photography. That's almost as long as it took humans to put wheels on luggage. So the rate of innovation was pretty slow. Now let's zoom forward 10 years. Look at what happened between 2000, 2009, 2010. We saw the advent of Flickr, of Facebook, and Twitter. And these three services, kind of in that order, are really transforming how consumers are sharing and enjoying consumer photography. So I'll zoom into Facebook for a second, because very quickly, over those 10 years, Facebook quickly became the #1 photo sharing service in the world. Now, Facebook didn't start as a photo sharing service. They didn't envision it with that narrow a focus. But the power of the social connections that Facebook enabled just naturally had this gravitational force and pulled consumers to use that service for sharing. Let's look at some of the current 2011 numbers for Facebook. Over 80 billion photos uploaded. 6 billion of those happen every month. That is just an unbelievable tidal wave of photography that's showing up on the service. And next up is video. Video is becoming so easy to share from mobile devices that, in my estimates, Facebook is doing about 30 million videos posted and shared a month as well. And Twitter, smaller numbers, but interesting kind of public sharing is happening. And Twitter just announced a whole bunch of new photo initiatives. So you can expect to see more photo action happening on Twitter as well. So how did this happen? How did we go from dedicated photo services like Ophoto, a dedicated social photo service like Flickr, all of which just getting dominated by Facebook and their social graph? Well, to understand that, I pulled a diagram from a user experience consultant and author named Gene Smith. He posted in 2007 an article called Social Software Building Blocks. And he created this diagram, which is kind of a user experience diagram for, in the center, what is your key, most important attribute of your web service, and then what are the secondary or related attributes around it. And he pulled these 7 items, and he based this on a 2003 article by Stuart Butterfield. And Stuart was one of the co-founders of Flickr. So you can see this story has its roots in some of the early social networking websites like Flickr, and I'll talk more about Flickr in a second. But you can see at the center here is identity. Any social software is about putting a digital presence for yourself on the web and then linking your identity to other people. They might be friends, they might be business colleagues on LinkedIn, etc. And around that, other attributes like your presence. Are you currently on the web in real time? Your relationships and connections to those other people, your reputation, how much authority or reputation do you have, grouping these people into groups, having conversations, not just sharing media, but also talking about it and discussing it, and of course sharing, which is very much the cornerstone of Facebook. And what Gene Smith did is he took this diagram and he started to color code it for different services. And I've made an attempt to update that. And if we look at Flickr, you can see that Flickr was very focused on photo sharing. And that was at the center of that service. And it took off very rapidly based on that. But it didn't have strong functionality in a lot of those other areas. You could argue it had some strong groups as well on Flickr. Dig, the social news service, really took off in terms of creating conversations around shared links. When you look at Twitter, Twitter really brings presence, the real-time aspect of what are you sharing right now. And it also brings in the aspect of reputation. How many followers you have on Twitter is a pretty interesting type of reputation for your social clout on the web. And last but not least, Facebook. You can see that Facebook is very, very strong in almost all of these social building blocks. So it's no surprise when you start to unpack the plumbing, it's no surprise that Facebook has become the dominant social service on the web globally. So looking at some of the roots of social photography, when we look at Flickr, one of the innovative things that Flickr did is it allowed its users to tag areas within a photo and point out people or things of interest. And it also allowed people to create these topics or tags, and those kind of informally became groups. Here's a group pool that someone created many years ago called What's in Your Bag. And as crazy as it sounds, large numbers of people would take photos of what's inside their briefcase or their purse, and then they would tag the contents. And we can take a look at one here. So you can see that this person in her purse, she's tagged all of her items, including her watermelon deodorant. So if you ever feel the need to unpack your briefcase, Flickr is a great service to do that. But jump ahead to Facebook. Facebook took that tagging metaphor and it applied it to the people in your social graph. So here's a photo from a friend's birthday party. It's a group shot with all the attendees of the party, and you can see in the blue text below a high percentage of the people that were there are also on Facebook, and they're all tagged in that photo. And that caused an exponential virality, because whenever someone's tagged, they then get notified in their news feed that they're in that photo. And that really helped spread the adoption of photo sharing on Facebook. And then once those people are all tagged, they can start posting comments. They can start the discussion about that event, about that memory, about why it was so great. And that's the power of social photography, is bringing those together. And it really ties into all of those pieces of those building blocks. But Facebook is, Mark Zuckerberg and his team were not the only entrepreneurs to figure this out. There is a huge explosion of social software on the web. Many different sites tailored to many different things. I mentioned LinkedIn earlier, really tailored to business networking. And that creates huge choice for the consumer. So when we think about where is tomorrow's consumer going to share on the web, it's not just going to be on Facebook. I found this photo on Flickr, actually, about, this guy made a little graphic of all the different services that he uses to share his media on the web. And, unfortunately, there's no one perfect service that does everything. This is another great mashup graphic that I found, the My Face In Social Everything service. That doesn't exist. Instead, consumers are faced with a huge number of choices. Just in photos and video alone, there are just massive numbers of social sharing services. And so, based on that, I wanted to talk about some of the innovation that has happened in this category of social photography. So I picked 3 startups to share with you. One is a startup called Pixelpipe, and Pixelpipe was born by some exophoto folks that I know well to solve this problem of how do I take a picture from my mobile device, a picture or a video, and how do I share it across the social web? I don't want to upload it 17 times, but I might want to put it in 17 different places. My blog, I want it on YouTube, I want Facebook, I want Flickr, I want Shutterfly, I want Ophoto. And so Pixelpipe created a cloud service where you can upload once and then send that media to lots of different places, which they call pipes. And they made it available on pretty much every smartphone out there. So they built mobile clients on every or most of the predominant smartphones. And again, back to consumer choice, you want to meet the consumer where they are, the device that they're using. Here's a screenshot from the Pixelpipe Android app, and you can see once you've set up some pipes, you can simply check them on or off. So every time you take a photo or a series of photos and you want to share them, you can customize, is this a work photo? I want to send it to Twitter and to my blog, or is this a personal photo that I want to go to Facebook and to Flickr and to Kodak Gallery? Very, very easy to do that. Pixelpipe also made sure that you can do that in any language that you choose, and they've been very focused on making that a global service. The next category of innovation I want to talk about is discovery. And discovery is this idea of how do you find great photos that you want to enjoy. They might be photos of your friends and family that you care about. You've all experienced this on Facebook, where your news feed is almost like a conveyor belt. There's so much stuff happening. It's flying past you. You probably only see about 7% of the stuff that's actually shared with you on your social graph. Similarly, you might want to discover great photos about a certain topic. If you're obsessed with kite surfing, you want to see great pictures about kite surfing. How do you find those? How do you discover great photography? Picsible is a New York-based startup that's focused on solving that problem. It's actually a very global startup. The two founders are both from MIT, and one founder is from Caracas, Venezuela. The other founder is from a small town in northern Spain. So this company has more of their meetings conducted in Spanish than in English. And Picsible really built their products on top of the Facebook social graph. So they actually use the Facebook platform and the Facebook APIs to create a series of products. You can use it as a Facebook app. You can use it on your iPad, which you see on screen. You can also use it on your iPhone. And what Picsible does, in a nutshell, is it scans all of your connections on Facebook and all of the photos shared with you, and it automatically ranks them and finds the most important ones, the ones that had the most likes, the most comments. And it groups them into categories like best of the day, best of the week, best of the year. And it gives you a wonderful interface to browse through those. And I'm going to show you.
If you have 300 friends on Facebook, you're connected on average to 100,000 photos. With PhotoFeed, you simply have to log into Facebook, and we start analyzing dozens of variables to determine who are your closest friends and what are the photos that matter to you the most. These are actually the most popular photos uploaded this week by my 1,200 friends on Facebook. So PhotoFeed not only analyzes who are your close friends, then it starts looking at all the photos and the metadata that surrounds it, like comments and likes. So in this case, this photo actually belongs from a very close friend, and it has a lot of likes and comments. The great thing about this is that as soon as there's an album that you're interested in, you simply have to swipe vertically, and you can enter the album very easily and start looking at all the photos that belong to that album. As soon as I get bored of looking at photos of the same album, I can just swipe horizontally again, and I'm back to the category, swiping through different photos of different friends.
So that user experience that you just saw a clip of is really innovative. What Picsible did is they allowed you on a touch device to just fly through the best photos from your social graph, and when you see one that's interesting, you then swipe vertically, and now you're going deeper into that album. And that's something that just couldn't have existed before the advent of the iPhone and the iPad. This is an infographic that the Picsible team put together. Because they are programmatically analyzing so many photos, they have a huge amount of data that they're doing machine learning on. And they shared with the world some interesting insights, and they picked the profile photo on Facebook as an example to show what's happening with profile photos. One of the things they found is that people are changing their profile photo 3 times more frequently now than they did back in 2006. And so the interesting trend that they were able to pull out, again, on top of the Facebook platform. You know, and you can see how you compare to these stats. The average user of the million or so people using Pixible's products have 26 different profile photos. So you can decide whether you have more or less. Maybe you're behind and you need to update your Facebook profile to keep current. The third startup I wanted to talk about is a startup called Instagram. You may have already heard of this product. It's grown very, very rapidly as an iPhone application. Now keep in mind, this is a startup that basically only has an iPhone app. They barely have a website. They don't support any other mobile platforms, yet they've experienced exponential growth. And Instagram is innovating how we capture photographs using these mobile and social devices. So I'll walk you quickly through the user experience. When you run the Instagram application, it takes control of the camera on your iPhone. Here's a picture that I took of the Transamerica building. I can then, from the little filters along the bottom, choose a special effect filter, so I can make my photo look more creative. Instagram helps turn ordinary people into creative photographers. That's part of the emotional benefit of the product. Once I've done that, I can give it a title, Good Morning San Francisco, and I can effortlessly turn on where I want to share this photo. So here I've turned on Twitter and Facebook. This is a little bit similar to the Pixelpipe service that I showed you, but it also includes the capture experience. So it's a very, very powerful customer experience. Once I've shared that, in addition to putting my photo out on Twitter and Facebook, I'm now in the Instagram feed. And what this feed is, it's just a continuous stream of pictures of all the different people that I follow. So you can see my friend John Lilly is coming up with a photo that he took. And if he follows me on Instagram, he'll see my pictures as I take them in real time. Instagram also has a part of their UI called Popular. And this is where you can see pictures from people you don't know. So this is a little bit Twitter-like, where the photo sharing is happening publicly. I can see a stream of popular photos. I picked one in particular to show you. Here's a popular photo posted from an Instagram account called Photo of the Day. Now, this account has nothing to do with the company that created Instagram. It's just some clever entrepreneurs that decided they were going to do a daily photo contest. And when I click on their account on Instagram, I can see they've been doing it for 137 days. They've posted a photo each day. They already have over 10,000 followers. And they're using Twitter and Facebook as a way to get people to enter their contest, to share photos with them. So they're leveraging these existing social graphs like Twitter and Facebook, but they're creating this new shadow graph of people following them on Instagram. So we're in a kind of a weird time where new social networks are cropping up on top of the Facebook platform. And that product single-handedly kind of turns your iPhone into this connected digital camera. It's a really powerful experience, and you can see from their user growth how popular it's been. It's very quickly grown to over 5 million registered users in about 18 months or less. So the pieces of the puzzle here for this thing I'm calling social photography, I think can be distilled down to these 4 areas: capture, share, discover, and discuss. We saw how capturing photos is made more exciting, more creative with a service like Instagram. Sharing photos is made effortless with a service like Pixelpipe, and we saw how Instagram is also taking advantage of sharing on the social web. And a service like Picsible is really helping you discover new photos, new people, new photographers. And across all of these services, using Facebook and Twitter, people are actually getting into a conversation around the pictures. So those numbers that we looked at for Instagram, that exponential growth, is a good example of something you've probably heard of called Moore's Law. And Moore's Law, started with semiconductors and the number of transistors growing exponentially. But it's really been applied to a number of other areas of innovation. There's a whole new university called Singularity University that teaches the application of this to new scientific areas, this idea of exponential growth and exponential improvement. Well, for photography, I want to play on those words and claim that in the case of consumer photography, there's something called the more captures law. What's happening is that all of these innovations are allowing us to take more pictures more easily. This effortless capture from all of these new connected devices. These phones that we get for free have cameras, but they also have an internet connection, and they allow us to effortlessly take and share those pictures. And that is going to continue to lead to exponential growth in this category around photo sharing, photo discovery, photo capture. The 3 services I showed you today, I believe, are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of new innovation happening in this area. So I hope you enjoyed that brief tour of the evolution of consumer photography. You can follow me on Twitter at James Joaquin. You can also see this presentation online at that URL. If you go to bit.ly/evophoto, this presentation is hosted on a service called Prezi, where you can find it online. I don't know if we have time for questions. If not, I'll be around at the break. I'm sorry?
2 questions.
2 questions. Okay, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I know I stand between you and a coffee break.
Hello, my name is Leandro. I'm from Brazil. How do you see the trends of print-on-demand photos and this relationship between viewing an online photo and printing it in fine art, for example?
Could you say the second part again? I'm sorry.
This difference between viewing a photo online and printing it and putting it in your living room, for example, in a high-quality paper, like fine art.
So the question is, what's happening in the difference in the user experience between viewing and sharing online and the more traditional way of printing a photo and displaying it?
If you think this is a trend, there are several businesses that are doing fine art print on demand.
Yeah.
So how, if you think this could be a next trend?
It's a great question. I mean, I think they're both important. And I think they are becoming somewhat disconnected. When we built OPhoto, they were very connected. Online sharing was a way for your family members that maybe live in a different city to see the pictures, but then to also make prints and put them in a photo album. Now we're so connected all the time with digital connections on our phone, on our laptop, on our digital picture frame in the kitchen, on our Apple TV in our living room, that consumers are printing less. I think printing is still important. It's very important for archiving. But I think the more of the consumption is happening digitally. And take it from a guy who grew a very big, very large printing business. I think that's shifting. But the example you gave about fine art printing, for example, there's a startup based in New York City called 20 by 200 that takes emerging artists and allows you to buy a collectible print for only $20. And they're using social media, Facebook and Twitter, to get excitement and to promote those images. But really, the ultimate experience is to purchase that print and to have it and to know that it's a limited edition print, that you're one of only 200 people that have that edition of that image. So some other things are happening where the social web is driving printing, and it really varies by category. My last question here in the center.
Hi. So I just downloaded Pixelpipe on my iPhone. It seems really cool. But what's the monetization model? It seems like a lot of these things are free, and we
Yes.
like it. But I guess the obvious question, but I'd like to know more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very big question. So the question was, what is the business model for this new category of social photography? I'll start with Flickr. Flickr is an interesting case study where it was acquired by Yahoo very early in its existence, and it lived on for many years as a service at Yahoo. But there have been press reports saying that Yahoo was never able to actually make it profitable. They were never able to find a way to monetize it. When we look at Instagram, the 5 million and growing service, it's unclear exactly how that service will ever make money. It's a free app for your phone. But the same question was asked about Facebook in its early days. And so I think the venture capital community believes that when services get to extreme scale, when you have tens of millions of users engaged with your product and spending time with it, then you'll probably find a way to monetize that product. One direction may be to incorporate advertising, which is always challenging with photography, especially if it's pictures of your friends and family. Do you really want a Netflix ad appearing above that? Maybe if the service is compelling enough, you do. Another angle that social services are taking is to build a freemium service where they have a certain part of the service is free, and then they try to compel you to upgrade to actually pay money to get some more premium services. And it's a little too early to tell with the Pixables and the Instagrams which of those directions they'll head in. But I think they're both first focused on getting to scale in terms of getting lots and lots of users. So thank you for installing Pixable. You're one more user for them. So thank you, guys. I'll be at the break if you have any more questions for me, and I appreciate your time.